You're listening to Merykid Explains, an oral history of one artist's discography featuring facts, feelings, and most importantly, context. Now, maybe you stumbled here by accident, or perhaps you're listening on some faraway planet in some distant time, vibing off an ancient method of communication. Or maybe, just maybe, you're one of the dozens of die-hard Merykid fans that actually finds value in this content. Regardless, feel free to sit back, get comfortable, and listen along to the gentle ramblings of a man and his memories. This is Merykid Explains. So, the first album, Corduroy Crown, recorded in 2007, released January 1st, 2008. It was sort of a statement to release it the first day of that year. It was a big deal for me. I had, for the last several years, been the lead singer, frontman, and principal songwriter for a very popular regional band in Texas called Window. And this entire existence of this band, took place in a time before social media. So it was a much different landscape back then. It was much harder to kind of lock down a core audience, unless you had something of a website presence. We had MySpace, which, did a little bit of work, but it wasn't as wholly interactive as something at like today's standards, which, are the big ones like Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, etc. We were really just a couple of kids, like, struggling to balance being in our 20s while also trying really, really hard to make this music thing happen. And at that time, different band members would come and go. Some of them focused on school, some of them focused on relationships, work, etc. The core of the band was myself and a guitar player who we had been making music together. We went to high school together, and we had been making music together for several years. And Window was kind of our baby that grew and grew and grew throughout 2005, 2006, and into 2007. We were touring and kind of talking to labels, but all of it really, the burden of it felt on our shoulders constantly, and it was hard. It was hard to be 22 years old and trying to, sort of live those were our best years, right? To want to experience the fun times going out with your friends and the sort of meaningful moments in your young life were sort of spent on the road. I remember missing weddings and birthday parties and watching the Spurs win the 2005 championship from a hotel in Miami, and knowing that all of my friends and family were back home in San Antonio just celebrating, So at the time, it was a worthy pursuit to be in this band Window, but it was hard. It was hard to try to put so much pressure and get as much fulfillment as we probably deserved from the amount of work we put into being an unsigned band back then. And it never really reached those heights. So ultimately, I made a decision to go solo. There was a different style of music that I was chasing at the time. It was very folk-centered. It was a lot more singer-songwriter driven. It was a lot more lyrical. It was a lot softer. It required a lot more attention paid to the context of the mood and what I was playing, and these things really intrigued me as a 22-year-old who had just sort of become obsessed with Bob Dylan. These things were not. It wasn't by accident that I started to get really into Dylan, and suddenly I wanted to sort of pursue my path as a singer-songwriter, right? It just kind of goes hand in hand. So in 2007, I think I paid a little bit of money to a friend of mine to record me, and it was exactly the way that every first album goes. I was recording in a closet, just 5 acoustic songs. But what I recall at the time, I just came with a lot of ideas, and I came with a lot of already experimentation regarding the process of how I wanted to record it. So you can listen to certain songs, specifically a song like "For the Writers in California," which first of all, on this album, I'm playing almost every instrument. There's one guitar player who plays, I think, like 3 lines in one song. But in a song like "For the Writers in California," for instance, I'm playing the trumpet, and the trumpet is heavily affected. So, it's just it was really out there, and I was really pushing myself as a solo artist, kind of, not so much even for anybody else, but really showing myself like, hey man, you've got the power to do this. And I was, it was empowering to feel like you're only limited by your own creativity. I often feel that's the energy I take into the studio, is that really every sound that could ever be created is available to you with effects, electricity, bumping this, miking that. I'm very much always in pursuit of, organic noise that's never been done before, right? I'm seeking Natalie Portman's dance in her bedroom in Garden State, saying, I in this moment I'm doing something that's never been done before, whatever. And so when it came to Corduroy Crown, the principal intention was to write these songs, which were centered around the lyricism, like the lyrics and the acoustic guitar, but then just sprinkle in a little bit of creativity to sort of give people listening a kind of idea where I would eventually want to go. So Corduroy Crown, it was exciting at the time too, because, this is at the age of 22, and having been in a band for a long time, I sort of had amassed a collection of creatives around me that I was then able to sort of implement my vision into what kind of photos I wanted to take and what I wanted the sound to be, the image, the colors, these little things that some people don't care about. I care about them a lot. And it was really a sort of playground for me at the time to get to make all the decisions that, take it for what it is. I really enjoy sort of being in the driver's seat of those situations, at least for myself. I'm willing to go down with the ship if the ship was created by the wood that is my decisions, right? So with that being said, to get into the record, the first track, Who It Is I Am, this is a very folky kind of pop-ish song at the time. We're talking like mid 2007, still kind of living in the maybe the tail end of the sort of like Jack Johnson, Jason Mraz, John Mayer, before John Mayer was about to release, or he had just released Continuum. So, we're still experiencing the new John Mayer, not the sort of like pop, bedroomized Bodies of Wonderland John Mayer, right? But Who It Is I Am was a sort of a fun little, it's just kind of like a folk bluesy little thing about me kind of riffing on just general thoughts. The first line was very intentional. I've got 15 pairs of shoes. They're all lined up 2 by 2. You don't have to live this way, but I believe on my dying day, I would really like to say that I had something to lose. Not only have I always been proud of that line, of that whole, stanza, but what I do recall at the time too, in 2007, the sort of sneakerhead thing was really in full effect in the culture. Artists like the Cool Kids and sort of Nike SBs and all of these things were kind of really hitting their stride. We were about to hit the sort of like 2008 blog house, Justice, electro wave, right? And so big colorful shoes, big colorful clothing, American Apparel, like these were we were about to hit the recession, and the way that society sort of bounced back from that, at least like the youth, was to just like dance through it. And so it was all colors, it was all shoes. Materialism was a huge thing, and when I wrote that line, it was really sort of alluding to my personal interest in fashion, and just the fact that I was sort of known as this guy that had a lot of shoes. I was really into the sort of Nike SB culture, the way that people at the time were sort of kind of doing the thing where you sleep overnight for a shoe drop at the local skate shop. The Nikes would drop every like month or so. Abigail Curry, who's the only other vocalist on this record, she was a great friend of mine, and she was another artist in San Antonio who was doing just incredible things vocally. She was always someone that I really admired from an artist standpoint. Abigail, if you were to go and look for any of her work, she's got a few songs on Spotify now. She understands the concept of beauty more than probably any other artist I've ever worked with. She just understands what sounds pretty. The songs that she writes, the way that she plays the guitar, all of it is beautiful. It's never not beautiful. And so it was, at the time, it was just sort of a dream. She was a friend of mine, and it was a dream to have her as, like, you know, just have her in the back, like, kind of backing me up. I knew I was in good hands for sure. So, again, Who It Is I Am, just sort of, I'll never forget, too, another statement lyrically that I made in this track. There's maybe the fourth passage or so where I say, like, I went to a doctor and I said it hurts too much when I watch TV, and until it was time for me to leave, he just stood and stared at me, and as I left, I heard him say, "You're fucking crazy." And I'll never forget, I played this song for my dad, you know, and again, he was like the biggest Window fan, my band previous to Merykid, and so he was very curious about where I was going to go when I left that group and went solo. And when I played this song for him, he heard me say, you know, the F word, and I'll never forget him just kind of like staring off into space and him saying, "I don't really understand where you're going with this," and that was kind of it. You know, and again, just being 22, like, that was the most radical thing I could do for me. It was just, you know, say the F word in like this kind of passe way, just sort of slip it in there. I love this song. I'm really proud of it. I think it's a really solid opener. I've only performed it once, which was like the first time I ever played after releasing this record. I guess I did like a CD release at like a local bar, and it was pretty terrible, and I don't think I ever played the song again. Track 2, Clean Freak Ghost. Interestingly enough, I have a lot to say about this song. For those of you who have been rocking with me for the last, I don't know, at this point it's been 15 years, Clean Freak was the song that got everybody's attention. And when I say everybody, I mean all the way from people locally, like in a local way, all the way to like CBS, the television network, actually bought this record because they heard that song. The song at the time was, it had been like kind of picked up in this sort of blogosphere in its own way. It got featured on this website. So GarageBand.com used to be a website before it was the DAW, where, you know, that you can use to like make your demos or whatever. GarageBand.com was a website where it was a peer-to-peer music criticism site where you could give feedback to like 5 independent songs that were uploaded, and then 5 people would give feedback to you, and you would rate them 1 to 5 stars, and then you would write your little blurb on it. And so I spent some time just reviewing so many people's songs, giving myself an opportunity to upload mine, and I put a bunch of mine, I put these songs on there, and I just kind of walked away from it. You never really, watching the kettle until it blows off, it's never going to work. So I put them on there and I walked away, and I'll never forget. Maybe like a week or a month or something later, I came back and Clean Freak had like skyrocketed. People were to make a long story short, Clean Freak became the highest charted acoustic song in Texas on this website, which then got featured in an iTunes playlist back when that was a thing. For all of you kids listening, that's a real sentence. It was on a playlist on iTunes for, top independent Texas acoustic artists. And from there, CBS came calling. That was where they were getting their information. They saw that website or that playlist, and then they came calling. So Clean Freak opened a lot of doors for me. And the weird thing about it is that is not the song that I even put I never put a lot of thought into that track. It was something that the chorus is something that came to me in traffic. I was at a red light, and I just started singing those words. I mean, like verbatim, the chorus. I'm a clean freak ghost. I cover my tracks and I disappear like smoke. That came to me at a red light, and I held on to it. And the rest of the song just sort of organically came about. The guitar, the picking pattern, the rest of the lyrics, all of these things were just, it all came together. It all fit. I think it was actually the combination of several songs that I then took the best pieces of those songs and sort of put them all together, and I got what I got. It was a throwaway track, if I'm being honest. Clean Freak was a throwaway track. I never had any intention. I never could have predicted in a million years that was the song that 15 years later, it's the one that I'm most known for. It's the one that has opened the most doors for me. It's the one that people to this day still bring up. It tickles me to death. I can't even, to even sing that song now, 15 years later, it doesn't even feel right. It's like singing someone else's song. I'm not 22 anymore. I'm 37 at the time of recording this. So it's not even really my song anymore. It just is a song that I received and just put out into the universe. And it goes to show it's the ones that you're not really thinking about that really hit, because Clean Freak hit. That song opened doors. It got people's attention. People loved it. It even might have become a thing where people liked it because they thought they were supposed to, because other people liked it. I don't really know, but all I can say is that Clean Freak was a gift from God. It was a gift from the heavens. It just it was transferred through me out into the world, and it did more for me than it ever should have. Clean Freak, Ghost, that song was that was special for sure. Track 3, Daisy Chain, specifically, I was dating a girl in maybe 2004, and I just had a recollection of one of the days that I was over at her house. We were still in high school, or maybe like early college, young. I just had a recollection of one of those days where I was like out working in the garden with her and her mom, and I always thought that was such a sweet little thing, So the opening line, you used to take me into your garden in a hot afternoon, and then I would stay up all night just thinking of you. It was all very innocent. I think I wrote that. Those were some lyrics that I had written at some point in just like my trek of being an artist in general. Somewhere in between the years of 2004 and 2007, I had written that down. And you got to remember, too, that this being my first solo album, a lot of these songs, pretty much the last couple songs were all things that I had written that I didn't feel right giving to Window, the band. And I just knew one day they would find a home. And that's just how I think it goes for most solo singer-songwriters is you're taking a collection of things that never felt right with the people you were working with and then putting it to work, right? So Daisy Chain, It's the most folk song on the record. I called myself a folk artist, but a lot of it was very experimental and sort of like diving into other genres. Daisy Chain was highly a folk song. It even has that sort of like chugging bass line. There's also a bouzouki solo. That is me again playing the bouzouki. The bouzouki is a sort of octave mandolin. It's like the size of a guitar, but strung as a mandolin. I only found one and knew what one was because the band Nickel Creek had a music video where Chris Thile plays a bouzouki in the video, and then also featuring, of course, the I don't recall his name, but the bassist from Metallica is playing the upright bass. Very cool. I'm a huge at the time I was a huge Nickel Creek fan, and even more so a huge Chris Thile fan. So again, my way of sort of honoring my heroes at the time in that sense was I brought in a bouzouki to do that solo. It was no small feat, but again, it was just kind of I wasn't gonna have it any other way. I was gonna play all the instruments, and I like that solo a lot. I'm actually proud of it. I'm not a soloist by trade. I don't know music theory. I'm very self-taught, which is very limiting to me. But that solo, I wrote it out. I really liked it a lot. The next track, Seasons. This was, I would say, if Clean Freak was sort of like the heavy hitter of the record, Seasons was kind of like my backup punch. That's a really popping, like that sort of thumping, popping style of playing. John Mayer made it very popular, but the reason it was so natural for me to do it was because I had started playing the bass guitar before I played acoustic or just guitar in general, which sort of gave me a very heavy hand when it came to my playing style at the time. And it was very natural for me to just sort of pop, like just thump and pop off the strings, while also sort of adding in a little bit of the kind of like finger grazing over to strings to add in some extra notes. Again, John Mayer did it a lot, and I brought it on Seasons. Seasons is probably like one of my favorite songs I've ever written. I try every now and then to kind of like get back into it. I don't have that same kind of like rhythm in my hands yet. I'd have to practice for a while. Again, I wrote this song almost 20 years ago, but Seasons, just a little thing again that I had written. I remember writing it in 2006. I was dating some girl. She lived in Del Rio, and so it was there's a lot of alluding to a girl from the Southland. Again, huge, very much similar to like something Dylan would say. You girl from the North Country, whereas I was over here saying girl from the Southland, and it was a very innocent sort of like crush on this girl that made me kind of write like there's not much on my mind. The changing of the seasons, just sort of like this young, innocent take on the just like being young and having a crush on someone. The one great takeaway from this track, like when I listen to it now, what I really am proud of most is the harmonica solo. I'm really like kind of going in on that solo, and I actually forgot to mention that the harmonica solo that I played on Who It Is I Am, I'm very proud of. It was very much an allusion to Bob Dylan's style of playing in the Highway 61 Revisited era. It was very... Dylan's harmonica at the time was very punchy. It was very concise. It was very metered. It was very effective. And that was the style that I wanted to, too. I wasn't trying to be John Hopper with Blues Traveler. I wasn't trying to just, throw up. I think a friend of mine once described John Hopper as sounding like he gets paid by the note when he plays. For me, it was just sort of like using the harmonica to add. It's a very powerful instrument. It's very shrill. It cuts through. And I'm just playing the acoustic guitar, right? So it's going to make an impact regardless if you're listening. And so the notes are the notes are very specific. It's very intentional. I actually took harmonica lessons before recording this album in order to have some semblance of control over what I was bringing to the table. So I do listen back to those songs, and I think okay, that was pretty good. I think that I would be proud of myself. If I were in the room listening to myself playing, I'd probably be like, good for you. That's pretty good. And it just goes to show you what even the slightest bit of practice, how that can elevate your game. Not a lesson that I've ever kept to heart. I don't even want to go into that. Just don't even get me started. But again, not to sandbag myself, but practice. If you're listening to this, practice at anything. You'd be surprised at how just like good you'll become soon. You'll get better immediately. You'll be a little better. But anyway, so Seasons. I love that style of playing. I love that song. There's no hook to it, and so it was never something that had the ability, kind of like Clean Freak, to maybe catch the attention of like labels or anything like that. It probably could have if I had tried to write a hook, but it's really just the same phrasing over and over again with just like a different melody. So, it was what it was. It was I'm proud of it. And the last song on this album, For the Writers in California, this song to me was me at my best at the time. It was very topical. There was a writer's strike in California at the time. I had just gotten back from the trip in LA with my band. We had just gotten off the road maybe a couple months prior to this, and at the time there was a writer's strike happening, and I remember driving through the streets, seeing the picketing, seeing the signs, and I saw myself as something of a writer myself, so sort of had a kind of like kindred, felt as though kindred spirits were fighting the fight that I wasn't, and I did what I could, right, as a songwriter and as a folk songwriter. I just tried to offer some sort of like topical take on the matter, and I'm actually really proud. I mean, if I had to say, like, if there are certain things, every songwriter can look at the songs that they've written, and it's clear to them which ones were inspired and, which lines really stood out as kind of like, for lack of a better word, which ones popped. And I think of the chorus that I wrote on this track: money will buy you freedom like the devil will save your soul. Everything will be fine in time if you could just let this go. But that money will buy you freedom like the devil will save your soul. And you think about now, in 2022, we're about to enter what is about to be our third freaking recession. It's the highest inflation it's ever been, I think, currently. Gas is $4, over $4 a gallon, and everything else is just skyrocketing, and it's just it's crazy to think things really have not changed. Things have gotten really worse from a sort of like socially economic equality standpoint. But it's and in 2007, I'm talking about a writer strike. That would not be the last writer strike. I think at least one more big one happened around 2018 when the writers were sort of like lobbying for their cut of the streaming rights, right? So there's never enough. There's never enough to go around. Or if there is enough to go around, it's never shared enough. So with that being said, the track For the Writers in California, it's very somber. Again, written on the bouzouki. The bouzouki has a very kind of like punchy, powerful feel to it. I really play it in like the higher registers, so it gives me the ability to sing a little quieter and softer and lower, which I think is a nice balance and a sort of change of pace. I played the trumpet on, and it wasn't even a trumpet. It was called the pocket trumpet. If you Google it, or whatever form of Googling exists whenever you're listening to this, if you look up what a pocket trumpet is, it's a trumpet but much smaller. I played the trombone when I was in middle school, and I've just sort of always remembered the mouth formation needed to like make a pure sound in a brass instrument. So with that, I picked up the trumpet and just sort of fumbled my way through that solo and added enough distortion and reverb, on the back end to make it sound a little interesting. I'm not mad about it. Actually, I'm proud of it, and it just another testament to where I was, just trying to make as much sound as possible. Just I was so excited. I was so excited for the opportunity to just create, to have the ability to make decisions and, again, like, live or die by them. That's exactly the type of thing that just, like, makes me excited. You know, a lot of people, as the listeners will find out if you stick with me through this series, some people have drugs and some people have alcohol. Some people have cars. Some people have clothes, purses. Some people go out. Some people gamble. I've got creative projects. I've got albums. That's what I do. Any money, anything that I ever get and get to put aside, it immediately becomes, what's the next thing I'm going to make, and when is it going to come out, and how do I get it done? It's never gone away. It is my vice. And it all started with this project. This project, for better or worse, was the thing that opened the door for me. It's like I talked about it a little bit with Clean Freak. And it really just, the way, you know, if you want to call it beginner's luck, I think that might actually be an accurate summary of how it really kicked the door open for me personally and on a professional standpoint, because the momentum that came from this project would sort of like take me, you know, into, more or less figuratively, the stratosphere with what would follow. So to summarize, Corduroy Crown means a lot to me, to think about the freedom of being a kid with a guitar in a closet and a microphone, and you hit record and you say, go, and you get to make whatever sounds you want. You get to bring in whoever you want, your friends. You get to, it was just the first time that I had any creative control over anything. And I really feel like, for a 22-year-old kid who was going through whatever I was going through at the time, this was exactly the outlet that I was looking for, and in fact have never really walked away from since. So Corduroy Crown, it is what it is. Take a listen if you can find it. Enjoy it. You're listening to a very, very young me. And with that, you have hopefully made it to the end. This has been Merykid Explains. Thank you for listening, and stick around for the next one.